This is Gordon from Solar Eclipse Timer. I have experiences with solar eclipses and working with NASA. Therefore, how OceanGate used NASA in promotions caught my attention. Watch this OceanGate promotional clip.
We partnered with aerospace experts at the University of Washington, NASA, and Boeing on the design of our hull.
We partnered with the University of Washington, NASA, and Boeing on the design of our hull. Wow, that sounds impressive. Those are high-powered players. OceanGate must really have it together. Stick with me and I will try to explain what occurred. Here are 3 sample clips so you can see where I'm going with this.
We worked with a lot of local companies like Boeing and the University of Washington.
No, we were not the carbon fiber experts. If we don't have that expertise on there, we will help them find someone. And then Stockton later shifted that work to Spencer Composites.
Because that's where we worked with Boeing and NASA and the University of Washington.
I don't believe we received any feedback. We really never saw a full up design or analysis from OceanGate.
Right now, we're rebuilding the Titan submersible. So we're now working with NASA and other aerospace manufacturers on a replacement of the carbon fiber.
And we weren't able to accomplish any of the fabrication. We did not do any manufacturing or testing of their cylinders.
Have you ever dropped a name to impress? If you're a salesperson, to help try to get a sale, to impress somebody you just met at a party, impress someone on a first date. We've all done it and it's pretty benign, but there's a different category of name dropping where you are trying to help your credibility honestly or dishonestly.
We did work with Janicki, Boeing, NASA.
Now, it's fine if the collaboration is substantial and it does make your product or business better in some way. But where is the line between casual name dropping and trying to get credibility by touting a weak or false association?
Did you advise OceanGate on or recommend a coating for the outside of the hull?
No, we did not.
After the Titan disaster, companies Stockton used to tout as partners quickly released statements distancing themselves from OceanGate. Now that the sworn testimony at the Coast Guard Titan hearings is over, we have amazing insight into the full story. Let's discuss it. We'll talk about OceanGate and Stockton Rush, the University of Washington, NASA, and Boeing to talk about credibility name dropping.
I think maybe we were too expensive.
After I show you clips about these so-called partnerships, I will let you decide how much these associations contributed to the final Titan sub. I think you'll be surprised. I'm going to talk about NASA first. Because of my solar eclipse work, I have first-hand experience working with NASA. I know some NASA rules. There is a huge rule that I want to discuss concerning the use of the NASA meatball logo. More on that later. Let's listen to some NASA testimony and figure out when they were involved and to what degree.
You mentioned that you gave some advice remotely. Can you expand on that advice that was provided?
The nature of our advice at the time, if I recall correctly, we were, making recommendations for coupon level testing because it's, an unusually thick laminate. So
can you explain to us what a reimbursable Space Act agreement is?
the purpose of it is to give companies access to NASA facilities and expertise to, work on mutually beneficial technologies.
And what was your understanding of the intent of this Space Act agreement with OceanGate?
My understanding the intent was they were to fabricate a thick composite cylinder, which had interest to us for exploration applications.
So given the significant differences in pressure effects on spacecraft and submersibles, what rationale exists for NASA to lend its expertise to the development of submersibles?
We weren't necessarily interested in the end application. We were interested in the thick-walled composite for our applications, that albeit they would have been loaded differently. We were interested in potential habitats, radiation shielding, a number of other applications, not necessarily hydrostatic submersible.
Did you guys catch that? That was a fascinating bit of testimony. They were working together under what was called the Reimbursable Space Act Agreement, which just meant that private companies could pay NASA to use their facilities. NASA didn't even care that they were working on a submersible. They just thought it would be a good project to work on thick laminate so they could learn from it for their own uses.
Are you aware if NASA outlined or did any of the items outlined in those areas of responsibilities that we just looked at on page 14?
We did not. The COVID pandemic occurred and we weren't able to accomplish any of the fabrication. We provided remote consultation throughout the build of their 1/3 scale article, but we did not do any manufacturing or testing of their cylinders.
As far as I can tell from the testimony, they had little to do with the full-sized hull.
During discussions with OceanGate, did they make their intentions for the testing of the hull they were performing clear to NASA? Like their plans for NDT or any type of performance testing?
No, once COVID hit and we weren't doing the work in our facilities, they went off, and they found other commercial partners. We weren't really apprised of their overall plans. I was aware that they were going to do proof testing in the deep sea facility, but past that, we weren't apprised of any test plans.
Did you advise OceanGate on or recommend a coating for the outside of the hull?
No, we did not.
Before we move on to the discussion of NASA and using media, look at this promotion again, and you decide what you think the level of NASA's partnership was in designing the Titan hull. Respond in the comments.
We partnered with aerospace experts at the University of Washington, NASA, and Boeing on the design of our hull.
The next NASA testimony clips I play have to do with how OceanGate used NASA in their media releases. Before I do that, let me explain my experience with NASA regarding media. Prior to the 2017 solar eclipse, I gave a talk to the Marshall Space Flight Center solar scientists on eclipse photography, and I was on the 2017 NASA Solar Eclipse Science team. My solar science friends and I wrote a scientific article about shadow bands, and for the 2024 solar eclipse, I was a NASA Eclipse ambassador. But I know I must always provide a disclaimer that I don't work for NASA, and NASA does not endorse commercial products like my Eclipse app or my Eclipse book. For the article I wrote, a NASA attorney actually wrote a disclaimer for me to place at the end of our article that states that my work with them does not imply an endorsement of a commercial product. At that time, it meant my Eclipse app. In my book, I have a huge disclaimer that I cleared with NASA under a picture of the solar science certificate. You are on the honor system with NASA because they don't have time to police these things.
Sir, did NASA ever become aware that OceanGate used NASA in any type of media release?
The media releases that we saw were approved through our media department.
Is that right, Mr. Jackson, that you mentioned that the media releases that were made were approved through NASA's media department?
That's my understanding. I didn't work those. I just checked them for technical accuracy.
This is an example of an OceanGate press release that I can see NASA approving. It mentions NASA only as it regards getting valuable expertise from them. But listen to the answer when something approaching endorsement is encountered.
Do you know if there was any contact, either formal or informal, between NASA and OceanGate, or starting in 2021 timeframe?
And then we also had some exchanges. They wanted to do another press release that we ultimately couldn't come to resolution on the details of. And then conversations ended shortly thereafter.
Do you remember why you refused OceanGate's request to use NASA in the media release that you referenced?
It was the language they were using was getting too close to us endorsing. So it was our folks had some heartburn with the endorsement level of it.
Let's finally get to talk about the NASA Meatball logo and the NASA media rules. Do you know that you are not allowed to use the Meatball logo? When I saw OceanGate using the NASA meatball logo in an ad, I was shocked. I seriously doubted that OceanGate had permission to use it. There are specific written rules about using the meatball logo. You cannot use the meatball without explicit permission from NASA. It can't be used by people who are not NASA employees or on things that are not NASA sponsored. It cannot be used in a manner that would imply an endorsement of an external program or effort. It can't be used for branding or on third-party websites or communications. I was hoping this would be addressed directly as a question to Mr. Jackson, the NASA employee who testified, but it wasn't. I reached out by email to Mr. Jason Neubauer, the chairman of the hearings, and explained my NASA experience and asked about this. He said he agreed, and the board would look further into the use of the NASA logo for the final report. So that ends the NASA media use section. Tell me what you think in the comments, and now let's move on to Boeing. You will hear some really interesting things here. Let's look at the Boeing testimony clips, analyze their partnership on the design of the Titan hull, and see how involved they were in the full-sized hull. It seems like there were two time periods of contact, feasibility studies back in 2012 and 2013, and a brief time of acoustic emission work on the scale model in 2016. Let's listen to the testimony.
We worked with a lot of local companies like Boeing and the...
And what time frame was OceanGate and Boeing working together?
We had two different periods. The first was in the 2012-2013 period where we did the brief feasibility study. And then in 2016 was when we supported two different tests to record acoustic emission data.
Can you describe what was asked of Boeing for this preliminary feasibility study?
Yeah, briefly, we had two parts of that feasibility study. The first part was to look at a previously done design and analysis that OceanGate had commissioned from a company called Blue Force. So we evaluated the analysis methodology and the design of that configuration. The second part of that was we were given specific requirements from OceanGate. We were asked to determine and come up with a feasibility study or whether it was feasible to have a design with a certain amount of buoyancy and safety factor.
Was Boeing involved in any conversations that reduced the thickness of the hull from 7 inches to 5 inches?
In general, we did a feasibility study, preliminary analysis, and came up with a 7-inch hull that we thought was potentially feasible and didn't consider like the future detailed design work or effects of defects or anything, that would have been in a detailed configuration and analysis. Our expectation would be not that the hull got thinner, but the hull would have gotten thicker in order to account for some of those potential defects or other considerations in the design.
One main difference we noted was that the conceptual design included 45-degree plies. One of the statements of the report said, allowable strain tables do not support layups without plies oriented at the 45-degree direction. The final direction was constructed of only circumferential and axial plies, therefore there was no 45-degree plies in that final design of 5 inches thick. Was there any discussions with OceanGate about excluding the 45-degree plies?
Yeah, there certainly would have been. You would need to have the allowables data to support your design and your engineering. The material system and the production method that we had proposed, we did not have any allowables or supporting data for anything that didn't have 45-degree plies in the laminate configuration.
And can you briefly explain the potential importance of including 45-degree plies?
I guess the thought would be that there's potential for increased potential for damage or damage propagation based on the 0-90 configuration without a cross ply, or that the load redistribution, if you had damage, wouldn't be performed as well, or the laminate might not be as robust as it would be if it had 45-degree plies in there.
There's 667 layers of carbon fiber in just what's called a 0-90 axial and rotational layup, which is not normally done. But in the ocean, that's all you see. You don't get any torsional moments.
Increased potential for damage or damage propagation based on the 090 configuration without a cross-ply. Load redistribution, if you had damage, wouldn't be performed as well, or the laminate might not be as robust as it would be if it had 45-degree plies in there.
Did OceanGate provide feedback to Boeing after the study as OceanGate's design changed to determine if their updated design fell within the acceptable limits from the feasibility study that was conducted by Boeing?
I don't believe we received any feedback. We really never saw a full-up design or analysis from OceanGate.
Did you have any involvement with the development of the acoustic emission systems for OceanGate?
No. Boeing didn't have any involvement.
Did you have any involvement with the third scale model testing?
We weren't really involved in the materials testing, but we did have a small contract. We were requested by OceanGate to bring one of our commercially available acoustic emission systems and put sensors on one of their scaled test articles.
Were you involved, or was Boeing involved with any of the analysis of that acoustic emissions data from the third scale model testing?
I don't think we provided any analysis. I think we plotted the data and then gave them the download files and the data directly to OceanGate.
Are you aware if Boeing manufactured any components or third scale models for OceanGate?
We did not manufacture any parts for OceanGate.
Are you aware if Boeing helped or gave advice to OceanGate about the type of carbon fiber to purchase?
I don't believe we would have described what to purchase for OceanGate. I don't think we ever saw a final design or analysis from OceanGate.
And why did OceanGate and Boeing stop working together?
We had a number of different requests from OceanGate to respond to different requests for proposal. I don't know exactly, I think maybe we were too expensive.
And from your knowledge, is that when OceanGate and Boeing stopped working together in 2016?
I think the last time Boeing was in discussion with OceanGate was March of 2020, where we declined to respond to a request for proposal.
So those are the important excerpts of the Boeing testimony. Leave comments below on your thoughts about Boeing and the partnership regarding the hull. Watch the promotion again, and let's see how the University of Washington was involved.
We partnered with aerospace experts at the University of Washington, NASA, and Boeing on the design of our hull.
Finally, the University of Washington had the most involvement with OceanGate, although it comes in two separate entities, both associated with the university. These were the Applied Physics Lab and the School of Oceanography, where the pressure testing facility was for the scale models. There were two main engineers from APL, and they were a mechanical engineer, Dave Dyer, who testified, and an electrical engineer, Pete Brodsky, that did not testify. They would be fired by OceanGate between 2016 and 2017.
To clarify for the record, what year did OceanGate and APL stop working together on the submersible design?
I believe it's about 2017.
After that, OceanGate's association with the school would be to independently hire the pressure lab at the School of Oceanography a couple of more times for scale model testing. Let's analyze Dave Dyer's testimony and discern the degree of involvement that the University of Washington had with the full-size Titan hull.
How did the relationship start out?
Ms. Miyamoto and Stockton put together a contract, and that contract was a very wide open contract. It was meant to be something that allowed a lot of flexibility in there.
And what year was that?
That was about 2012, 2013.
And are you aware of how far along OceanGate had gotten into the design process for Cyclops 2 at the time?
I think it was all conceptual stuff from Stockton. I don't think they had really any design work at that point.
So the University of Washington Applied Physics Lab didn't have any maybe stock in changing it from 7 inches to 5 inches?
No, we were not the carbon fiber experts. We were relying on the other ones, and that was part of our deal with Stockton.
Were you involved in any of the third scale model testing?
Just the first two cylindrical models, the ones that failed prematurely. Yes, we were involved in those.
Do you know if any test data was ever received from OceanGate?
And then the second or follow-on test, that one included accelerometers for the acoustic emissions system in there. That was that was about the time we were phasing out of there, and I don't recall ever seeing the data from that. I know that the data was collected, but I don't recall seeing that data.
We understand that after the design aspects of Titan were absorbed in-house by OceanGate, the University of Washington was still utilized for pressure testing, correct?
That's my understanding. The last test that we were actively involved in was that scale model that failed. The rest of those were tests that OceanGate did on their own without us necessarily being involved in that.
What was your impression of the engineering department at OceanGate?
It was a tough group to work with. They had a different mindset on how to proceed with the program than we did.
This is around the 2015-2016 timeframe.
Yeah.
Why did OceanGate and University of Washington Applied Physics Lab stop working together?
It was the engineering. We were butting heads too much on there, and OceanGate felt that it was better to terminate that and let their group take over the engineering.
So Dave Dyer at APL had a mechanical systems drawing. Pete Brodsky had the control system done. That was all done on Cyclops 1. The landing gear, everything external to the hull by APL. Brian Spencer of Spencer Composites had the hull figured out. His analyst, Grover, produced a design and analysis report that said that this thing is going to go well beyond what the target was.
So there you go. A compilation of the important testimony clips from the people that were partners on the design of the Titan hull. I'm not going to give my opinion. I just laid it out there for you, and I am interested to read the comments, but I will list some points. The important points about NASA are, they never built anything. They didn't even care that the project was a sub. They gave remote suggestions about laying carbon fiber. They had concerns about inappropriate press releases. Their involvement stopped in 2016. The important points about Boeing are, they never built anything. Their feasibility study was back in 2012 to 2013. Their study came up with a 7-inch hull. They recommended 45-degree carbon fiber plies. Their involvement stopped in 2016 also. The important points about the University of Washington are, they had nothing to do with carbon fiber fabrication. They provided the scale model pressure testing. The Applied Physics Lab engineered components other than the hull. APL did not agree with OceanGate's engineering philosophy. Their involvement stopped after 2017. Important points about Spencer Composites. Spencer was responsible for the whole design and predictions. They thought the full-sized hull could be 5 inches thick. The strength was calculated to be adequate. Their hull failed due to poor manufacturing techniques. The Titan 5-inch hull was manufactured by Electro Impact. Please subscribe to my channel for other Titan content and to learn about enjoying total solar eclipses. Please like, share, and comment on this video. Thank you for watching.